A few years ago in Cardiff, I visited the excellent retro game shop Super Tomato, and I came away with an American Super Nintendo that could also play Japanese carts. You see, in the UK we had the PAL television standard, and that meant most of our games had borders that squashed the image and made them run much slower. This was my first real taste of import gaming, and since upgrading to a modded PAL SNES that can play carts from any region, I'm very slowly building a collection of Japanese Super Famicom games. In this episode of Gamer's Garden, I'm giving you a quick look at all of them. So I hope you enjoy the video, and let me know in the comments what you think of the Super Famicom. Assault Suits Falcon was the first game the guys at Super Tomato convinced me to get, and it's the original name for Sirenator, which I played a lot when it came out in the UK. It's a run and gun style mech shooter with a nice variety of weapons you can upgrade and great control. I always loved the beautifully animated sprites and the fantastic soundtrack, and this Japanese version feels much improved with a faster game speed and added visual elements such as the character portraits for the dialogue. The Western release was censored slightly, and this original version includes the infamous suicide late in the game. I can't follow the story in this version, and I'm not the world's best player at shooter games, but the variety and intensity of gameplay in Assault Suits Falcon makes it one of my favourite Super Famicom games. Axelay was the other game I picked up on recommendation from Super Tomato, and I've never even heard of it before I bought it. The first time I played it, I was blown away by the scrolling Mode 7 backgrounds. Axelay has awesome graphics and another fantastic SNES soundtrack. The bullets and enemies don't come quite so thick and fast as in other shoot 'em ups, so it's perfect for a beginner to the genre like myself. The game has vertical and side-scrolling levels, and you can customise your loadout the further you get into the game, providing some nice variety. There was talk of a sequel after its release, that never happened, making this game all the more special on the Super Famicom. Now, having the option to get Japanese games instead of PAL SNES games, on my next trip to Super Tomato, I decided to pick up Super Mario Kart. I loved playing this at my friend's house when I was a kid. We sunk weeks into it and I still hadn't bought it since. Playing this version is fantastic as it feels much quicker than the PAL release. Most of the menu text is in Japanese, but it's a Mario Kart game, so it's not complicated to understand and you can easily find the game type you're looking for. After playing the Super Famicom version, I would struggle to go back, and Super Mario Kart is still such a fun game to play that it's a great addition to anyone's collection. Along with Super Mario Kart, I picked up Super Mario World at the same time, another big game I had played a lot when I was younger but had never bought myself. One interesting thing about the Super Famicom release is that on the box, this game is actually given the title of Super Mario Bros. 4, and as far as I'm aware, this is the only place the game has this title. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this particular Mario game. To be honest, I prefer Super Mario Bros. 3, Mario 64 and Mario Galaxy 2, but I appreciate how well it's made and it hasn't aged a day since its release. I'm not overly familiar with it, and there are quite a few text boxes in Japanese, so I've struggled to progress through it. Maybe someday I'll set aside some time and give this classic game the attention it really deserves. On one of my visits to Super Tomato, the guys started listing games that the UK missed, and I just had to play. The big stuff like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy was of course in there, but my attention was instead drawn to Front Mission. Front Mission 3 is one of my favourite PlayStation games, so I just had to try the original. I haven't given this game the time it requires yet, so I've just played a bit at the beginning to whet my appetite. The graphics look excellent, and although the story looks to be mostly in Japanese, the gameplay text like the commands and statistics all seem to be in English. So hopefully, when I make some time, I can enjoy this excellent looking game from start to finish. This is definitely a Super Famicom game I'm very glad to have picked up. Apart from dabbling in the early King of Fighters games in my local arcade, I have very little experience with SNK fighters, so I decided to try Samurai Spirits, known as Samurai Shodown in the West. This fighter feels much slower than Street Fighter, and I imagine must be positively sluggish if you play the PAL release. It's a weapons-based fighter that feels like you really need to know what you're doing. It's definitely not a button basher, and I've struggled to get into it. I'm sure it's got its fans, but I don't know how well this port holds up having not played the arcade version, and I'd sooner stick to playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the SNES. Another classic Nintendo game I wanted to add to my collection was Yoshi's Island, and I opted for the Super Famicom version since I'm already way more familiar with it than I am with Super Mario World. I adore this game, and playing it full screen and at full speed is a joy. The Super FX2 chip is used so well in this game, and I much prefer it to the pre-rendered style of the Donkey Kong Country games. There's some Japanese text still, but I haven't found playing it an issue, and this Super Famicom version makes Yoshi's Island one of my all-time favourite Nintendo games. Finally, I picked up Super Mario AllStars for the Super Famicom at the London Gaming Market, and I was so excited to finally get it. It highlights how game releases are given different names for different territories, with what we think of as Super Mario The Lost Levels being correctly named, and our version of Super Mario Bros. 2 being called Super Mario Bros. USA. These games are all fantastic remakes, upgraded with SNES quality graphics and sound, and being able to play all of them with a save function is excellent. Playing the definitive version of Super Mario Bros. 3, possibly my favourite Mario game, is what makes this an essential purchase for me, whether you get the PAL, NTSC or Super Famicom version. So that's my collection of Super Famicom games so far. Thanks for watching this episode of Gamers Garden, and please let me know what to play next in the comments. I love being able to play these Super Famicom games full screen and full speed, and I doubt if I'll buy any PAL games for the system again. Until the next time guys, happy gaming.